in this case, the guard is coda stretta. With my dominant foot forward, my point here toward the chest, my hand low palm down, my body, my chest facing my opponent this way with my feet opened up this way. Now, here, this one can be confusing for some people. Marozzo says that I'm looking for somebody in the same guard as me or in coda lunga alta, which just means the feet are switched. What he's talking about is the fact that his false edge is toward my sword, and that he says I should throw a falso impetanto, that is tondo, into his sword, stepping my left foot. Some people mistake that to mean something called a falso tondo. A falso tondo is simply a false edge thrown horizontally into whatever, the person, the sword. So a falso tondo would look like that. And he says follow that with a reverso tondo, which comes immediately back the other direction. First of all, it's not what he actually said to do. Second of all, if I am over here, and obviously he is over there, and I make a motion toward striking his sword or himself, can I count on the fact of him remaining in that position? Would he stay there? Now what happens? The falso tondo is a pretty weak beat. Now, if his false edge is toward me, that might work, but I can't count on him staying there. Why would he? Particularly the fact that in that position, it's so natural and easy for him to make the mezza volta and present his true edge toward anything incoming, that would be a very strong thing to do and would prevent me from getting anywhere. So what Marozzo actually said, and what's interesting, is this maneuver is found all over the place. It's not just here. You'll see it a couple more times in Marozzo's material later on. Anonimo Bolognese uses it pretty often as well. And in those other circumstances, they don't always describe it in the exact same manner. They give more description. So what is a falso impuntato, first of all? That's not an undefined term. So Marozzo describes it in chapter 116 with his, it's a sword and targa play, where he says, throw this falso impuntato at your opponent. And he says, take your sword hand, and you have a targa in this hand. He says, take your sword over your targa, almost sopra il braccio, which means this is sopra il braccio, which is actually right over your arm. He said, almost, meaning you lift it over your targa, about, here's almost. But note where my true edge is facing, toward my opponent, in either case of here or just here. Then he says you throw that and extend that, turning your right wrist upward. That's a falso impuntato. He says thrusting that. So now that's being delivered from the left side. In this case, it's being delivered from the right side. The falso impuntato into the sword. And as I mentioned, there's other descriptions of this type of maneuver, in which case they explicitly say, throw your true edge toward the opponent's sword, and as it's about to meet, turn your hand over so that it's actually striking with the false edge. Now you can see also I'm perfectly prepared and set up to throw the reverso horizontally across the face. So that's the first maneuver. Not a falso tondo, a falso impuntato into the sword specifically. Make it appear to be a mandrito. If he's in that guard, what's he naturally going to do? See, that's a bit of what we're doing here, is playing off of that guard, the guard that I'm looking for him to be in. What's he naturally going to do when I do this? He's going to want to try to stop that. And that's fine. That's fine for me, because when I make the falso impuntato, that is a turning of the wrist. That falso, I should say that false edge, beats down whatever he's going to try to do, and I'm immediately ready to slash across the face. Note too, this is an interesting, good example of what gioco stretto is. 2 steps away. I have 1 step. That puts me where? Only close enough to reach his sword. I have a 2nd step. That puts me close enough to reach the person's face. That's gioco stretto. Stretta di mezza spada is another term we use, and that's different. In that case, stretta di mezza spada, where we arrive at a position where our swords are crossed in the middle, and I am 1 step away from striking my opponent. But here you see, I'm 2 steps away. That's gioco stretto. We have another range called gioco largo, which is actually 3 steps away. You can see the reasoning behind that. Okay, lift the tip here, and then back is the final movement there. So let's take a, here it is all together. Again, I need to see him in this guard or that guard. I don't care which, because I know naturally he'll want to turn his true edge into something that he sees coming toward his sword or toward him. So I'm starting from here, raise this, throw a true edge toward his sword that at the last moment turns over and goes horizontally. That's important too. That is descending on the diagonal, but turning on the horizontal to here, and then straight across. After I've cut through the face, I do something called a reverso di gamba levata. That is, I do a reverso with my foot in the air as I pass back into colunga alto. Okay? And I think that's what's important, is I'm not counting on him staying that way. In fact, making an action like this is a way that we initiate stretta di mezza spada. Stretta di mezza spada means that we are at the halfway point of the sword, mezza spada, in which case I am 1 step away from striking him. So it's like I'm trying to induce him to get into that with me, except it's a trick. Instead of that, I'll beat it down by turning my hand. Turn, step. That's quick. When you retreat here, it's for your own safety, a reverso. And this doesn't stop here. It goes through. That way I turn my palm and bring my hand over my head. There's a reverso in the making there. You see. Now the step back. He says, reverso di gamba levata. Di gamba levata, with the leg elevated. So when we kick, he actually says, do step back in the way that when you make a kick. What does he mean by that? When we kick in the Bolognese fencing style, which we do, it's done in such a way where I make a kick, I kick and I step back with a cut oftentimes. You make a kick and you place that foot behind you with your weight remaining on the other foot. That's what he's referring to. He doesn't mean that you make a donkey kick behind you, right? He's not saying that, he's not saying that you kick to get back into your guard. That's not what he means. All you have to do is look at all the instances of where we kick in Bolognese fencing, which is rather a lot. You have to find those, though. They're in later portions of the work. Prepare this and show the opponent, as Anonimo Bolognese says, give the other person an indication to defend themselves. That's what this is. When he does so, this better be horizontal with your false edge. If it's not going to be a good, strong beat. Look where that goes. When you do that well, you really knock it away. And this is prepared to do the reverso tondo across the face with a step. This turns, palm up, bring it over your head, and step your foot back, throwing this reverso, ending immediately in this guard of colunga alta. Okay? Brian's going to show you.